I'm always here for more Polly Pocket chat. It's my favourite thing in the world.
Is there anything else you collect apart from the Polly Pockets, or is that enough?
I've got all my vintage 90s, but it's mostly the Polly Pockets. This is too much for me. I really have to stop myself going on eBay.
Yeah, at least they're quite small though. You know, they're not going to take up loads of room, no?
You've not been to my house.
Oh, God.
Every mantelpiece just full.
Polly Pockets. I'm Claira Hermet. This is In Bed with Claira, and joining me in the bed today, she's a sex educator, author, broadcaster, public speaker, and she's on a mission to get people talking more confidently and inclusively about sex. It's Ruby Red.
Hello.
Polly
Thanks
Pocket.
for having me, babe.
Oh, yeah. Doing a little clap in there.
Polly Pocket babe.
She's a babe.
Yeah.
An absolute babe. Well, we're here in the bed. What do you think?
I'm really into this. I feel like you're setting a very high standard for interview environments, because now I want to do everything from bed.
It makes perfect sense.
Make it work.
They started work from home.
Cozy, intimate, work from bed.
Work from bed. Great. It's the new movement. To be fair, I think most people who work from home do
work from bed. But imagine taking a meeting. I feel like there'd be that sort of intimacy and vulnerability where you actually might be able to get stuff done a bit more, or like get a better deal. So if you're like, hey, come on, look, we can relate to each other. Yeah. We're just kicking back. We're cozy in here. Yeah. So no, I'm very, very happy to be here.
Do business deals in a bed. Negotiate. Not in that kind of way, you know, that it might have happened.
No, like toasty little pajamas. Do you know Sleepy Time Tea?
Yeah.
Yeah, the little bear with the nightcap. Yeah. That could be the environment for meetings and business deals.
Yeah, just with a cup of tea, your nightcap on, sit down and let's talk business.
Have a little nap if it gets too much.
Yeah, I wonder if you removed like the whole kind of, because clothes are very, they kind of give people a certain energy or power, or they make you feel a certain way, don't they? Like if you see people in a certain uniform, or if you see people. So seeing people in their pajamas might create a whole new vibe.
I mean, we can stretch this longer, because I'm a very, very happy naked person. Yeah. I'm basically on my way to becoming one of those like old nudists who just like walking along the beach in my 80s, just everything swinging about. Yeah. I think we would all get a lot more stuff done and in a better way if we were all naked. Yeah,
I love being naked, and I think it's really important, and so important for like my acceptance of my body, my love of my body. But the only thing I don't like about being naked is how it's automatically perceived as being sexual.
Yeah. I was in Lanzarote recently, and there were some really gorgeous nudist beaches, and more than 9 out of 10 people there were just really chill, there to have a nice time, not bothered at all. But then like most days when I was there would always just be one person who was a man who just changed the vibe of it. And I think we're so hardwired to view nudity as automatically sexual. And I think like it's women and femme bodies who kind of get harmed the most by that. But I think everyone is so aware of the sexuality of bodies when there's no clothes on. And I feel so bored of that, because if you are able to be in your body naked and it feel okay, because obviously I know that can be really hard for some people, but just relaxing into it where you're not seeing it as like, therefore sex is going to happen, or my body needs to look or behave in a certain way, like relaxing into your body is very important to me.
Yeah, not feeling like shameful or uncomfortable or any of those things, like being naked, because it's just your natural body. And I think it's like, you know, when you're a kid, I don't know if this happened to you, but you're a little kid, you're running around on the beach, and for ages you're like, as a girl, you're running around in just your pants. Yeah. And then suddenly there's a bit where part of your body has to be censored, aka like your chest, and then it starts to become this big thing, and it automatically you start to feel like kind of like, like what's wrong with me?
We were talking about like, I was Ruby Booby when I was at school, because there was me and one other girl who like kicked into puberty a bit earlier than everyone else. And that being a weird thing when you're like, I'm young. I don't want to feel my body changing. There's so much really, like when I used to go into schools and teach, there's a lot of really like nuanced, unsaid stuff about how strange and destabilizing puberty can be, because you're having to not only readjust to all this like weird stuff happening in your body, but the way that it's externally perceived. Because that was horrible, being like 11 and suddenly having tits and going like, I don't want this, but suddenly like I'm on the bus and people look at me in a very different way, in a very loaded way. like that isn't something, it's just really fucked up that that's the way that we have normalized puberty and growing up.
And also the way that we've normalized like bodies and nudity, because I will have this like conversation with people sometimes until I'm blue in the face, but this kind of idea that, you know, like it's a biological thing that men like boobs because boobs are a like sexual organ or whatever it is that they like to say. But then you can go to other parts of the world where women are topless all the time and no man bats an eyelid. They're not constantly turned on by tits because they're not sexualized. It's a programming.
Yeah. And also it's very, right now I'm really interested in like what building tension and really release looks like in desire, like reframing things. There's an amazing, do you know ContraPoints?
No.
She's a YouTuber. I love her. She's just brought this like big video essay out and talks about like desire and as like a lack, like wanting and yearning for something that we don't have yet. And I think even the idea of being on a beach and people being in bikinis, there's a weird thing there where you're like highlighting the areas that you can't see. Like I would much prefer if we could just be naked on beaches, because to me, like that tiny bit of material doesn't do much other than just highlighting something where that almost feels weirder, being like, oh, you can't see this. This is hidden.
But it just literally covers your nipple for some people, or it just covers like your
But that
vulva.
creates a taboo and a bit of a, well, I think it creates like something where people can sexualize more, because it's like the wanting to view that rather than, you're right, just if you were on the beach and there were just like all body parts just there. I know that that's also very like utopic of me being like, everyone be naked and it would be fine and nothing bad would happen. But I can dream, okay?
You can dream. And I think we're in this difficult space where it's like at the moment, a lot of people think and view nudity as sexual. So the idea of people being naked more feels like the two things are intrinsically linked, but they're not. So it's first about like realizing that those two things are different and can coexist with, you know, independently of each other. And I think that, you know, it's so refreshing to just, like I went to a nudist beach when I was in Colombia, and it's just really nice to not have to worry about it. Like where you have to put sun cream on and you miss a bit and or your bikini rubs it off and you burn yourself, or like any of those kind of things. And I hate having to kind of feel like, you know, there's bits of me that I should be ashamed of, because I really don't feel ashamed of them. What I hate is that kind of like sexualized gaze when it's not my intention. I don't like that.
I think I feel the most insecure in my body when I have put on like very traditionally sexy lingerie, because and especially if it's like not as, it's ill-fitting or it just doesn't feel as comfortable, because it's like putting a symbol of a very specific type of sexual attractiveness. And for me, that's also very much linked to like a male gaze in a very straight way, which isn't what I'm attracted to and actually isn't how I want to be perceived as a sexual being. But I can be really happy and comfortable in my body if I'm naked or like wearing lots of, you know, clothes are really fun and a great way of expressing ourselves. But actually, like me putting on like a really sexy lingerie set is probably when I will feel the most self-conscious in myself.
That's a really interesting point, because I'm now thinking about, you know, like if I wear, because I think there's more to think about. Like when I honestly, I didn't used to be confident naked, and we're going to talk about this later on in the interview. We can talk about it now. But I didn't used to be confident naked. I used to really loathe my body, and I'd be like, what about this bit? What about that bit? What about this? What about that? Whereas now I just think like, if I'm really confident naked, maybe too much.
Which is so nice though. No, but also like that makes a massive difference in just you presenting that and inviting people to explore that a little bit. Because none of this is easy. You can't just step into it being like, great. This has taken me like 10 plus years. But I used to be a life model for like a long time. I actually helped out a friend and modeled for her life during class last week. Wow. And it was really nice to just dip back into and like I feel so present in my body. I feel so relaxed. And there's also something very nice about like communal creative energy. I like going to life drawing classes because you're like all drawing and being creative as a group, but also posing. You're like, okay, I'm giving you all my time and my stillness and my body in this artistic way for you to draw. And I think that really reframed the way that I saw my body. Also just seeing what people appreciated about my body, being outside, you know, being like a kind of like mid-sized person. That was, I remember the first time I did a life drawing class, a friend of mine saying like, wasn't it really hard because for the whole hour you had to suck your tummy in?
No.
But in a drawing space, that's so not no one gives a shit. It's not like about looking a certain way. It's just being relaxed.
But even the fact that I guess like, you know, as especially I guess as women, that we do feel like that, you know, that we're constantly like, my stomach should be flat, this should, if I want to wear that, I need to have this, I need to do that, I need, like, it's the rules and regulations that we you know, kind of have to adhere to, or seemingly had to adhere to. There's so many of them, it's just crazy. You could never keep up.
I don't care enough anymore.
No.
I don't have the time. I just don't care about keeping an appearance for someone who isn't me, because I think I've like not shaved any of my body hair for a really lot, for like, again, maybe about 10 years. And to begin with, it was a very like political-y thing of being like, I'm such a badass, I'm gonna have hairy armpits, this is a great thing. And actually once that calmed down, not calmed down is probably the wrong phrase, but like once it didn't feel as edgy in me, it was just like, I can't be fucking bothered. I'm not gonna I don't wanna spend money to have laser. I've got loads of mates who have done, great, fine. I don't want to shave every time I'm in the shower. And actually it felt really nice and liberating to just be like, it doesn't matter to me. I don't care. I feel comfy enough in my body. No, like it's been enough time that I don't feel like, oh my God, people are looking at me. It just has become my version of normal.
Yeah, sure, you're normal.
And like everyone has a different version as well.
I just like to go on roller coasters with my body hair. So I'm like, I've literally,
fun little journey.
like my vulva, I think I shaved it for like used hair removal cream, not shaved. That's wrong. I would get real bad bumps. But probably for like the first time in like 3 or 4 months. Because again, sometimes I'm just like, yeah, I'm happy. And then other times I'll be like, oh, I just feel like switching things up.
Yeah, which is, and what a lovely place to be in, where your decision making is about switching things up or trying something different, rather than like, oh, I have to do this for someone else. I have to do this to feel acceptably sexy in my body or whatever it is. Like I was shaving my pubes before I had sex, like years before I was sexual with anyone, because that was just the thing to do. And I really wish, I think if either of us went back, like, I don't think I'd listen to me now being like, it doesn't matter.
She's
like,
old. She doesn't know what she's talking
about. You're old
about.
and you have hairy armpits. I am not listening to you.
But I totally hear that. And I was doing exactly the same thing, because I thought that's what I had to do. Like for, you know, for my, like, for me to be attractive, for me to feel attractive. And that's without anyone else seeing, let alone if people were seeing. Whereas now it's just like, it really feels like a choice. I did post, this just makes me laugh whenever I think about this. I posted a picture and I think I didn't even have like, I've had long armpit hair, but at this point I just had a little bit of stubble, right? It wasn't even, you know, a lot. And I posted like pictures of my like pubic hair, like around my vulva and like my legs or whatever. But anyway, this was a particular armpit picture. And this guy's comment was like vomit faces. And he was like,
it's disgusting, it's so unnatural.
And I was just like, oh my God. How?
Read it back before you press pause.
It grows out of my body. Does that mean that breathing is unnatural then? It's like something my body does naturally. There's nothing more natural.
I do wish that in period dramas there was more body hair.
Yeah.
Because it makes no sense. Like in Bridgerton, imagine like if they just normalised that as a thing of being like, yep, there's just going to be hairy legs, because obviously they were not shaving. That wasn't really a thing then.
No.
Yeah. Although some people were shaving their pubes because of pubic lice.
Oh, right, yeah. I mean, that was a reason. Get rid of the crabs.
I mean, and in that case, I'd be like, yep, okay, get it off. I don't want it anymore.
That's the only reason that Ruby would get rid of her pubes, is if she got crabs, basically. Is crabs and pubic lice the same thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And let's hope it never happens.
No, I don't wish that on you.
No, I don't wish it on anyone. That I always used to like creep young people out when I used to teach in schools and like go and be the sex lady and teach sex ed, of talking about pubic lice, that they're not only drawn to pubes, like they can be on other parts of your body and other hair, like say like your eyebrows or your eyelashes. Which the aim of the game isn't to like completely freak out young people so that they never have sex. So I was like, and if that happened, it would be fine. It would obviously be uncomfortable and weird, but like you'd get over it. But it's really fun having those things up your sleeve where you know that you can get a real response from the whole class.
So if I'm looking at someone now, right, and I see a little thing crawling in their eyebrow, I'm going to be like, oh my God, they got cramps on their face.
I'd really struggle with that. My friend's kids got nits recently and it sent me into a spiral because I was like, we've hung out. I hugged her. Oh my God, I have nits now. What am I going to do? So yeah, don't wish any of that on anyone.
But you didn't get nits.
I did not get nits.
You were fine.
And if I had, I would have sorted it out like a grown-up.
And gone and got the stuff. Well, it's too much work to deal with nits. I just leave them there. I'd be the same.
It would be the sign to shave my head.
You have no hair on your head, no hair on your vulva. It'd be all gone. Just all it would take is crabs and head lice, and that's what would happen. Be no problem whatsoever. Why do you think that we're still in a place where people are so grossed out by body hair? Because I admit, when I was younger, my family's German, and I would see some of my like dad's German cousins or whatever, and they would have hairy armpits, and I'd be shocked because as a child growing up in England, I hadn't seen that. I remember like seeing people at the swimming pool, and going, what? But also I remember seeing like people who were probably about my age, but like with young kids, and me being maybe in my early teens and being like, I would never be out like that. I can see your hairy legs, I can see your armpits, like you've let yourself go. And suddenly just going, okay, when you're an adult, especially if you've got kids, you've just got other stuff you need to do sometimes. You can't always be prioritizing like your physical appearance or grooming. And hair removal.
And like what a fucking saga as well. I don't know why, because there's something really visceral about people being I think it's very confronting seeing body hair, especially when you're maybe for you've assumed the norm that it's something that you are obliged to do and you have to remove fairly like religiously. If you see someone living in a way that challenges what you've been doing, I think we're all allowed those moments of being quite taken aback and it being a bit confronting. What I'd hope is that then they'd move from that and go, oh, why is that confronting? Am I able to like question why I've been doing this? Would I do things differently? Would I not? That's all okay. And yeah, the men stuff is just wild. It's so hypocritical when it's like, you've got that hair on your body. And yet, if it's on mine, it's unnatural. If it's on yours, it would be gay if you shaved your armpits? Like, it's so socially constructed that like, I think still for lots of men to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Like grooming has a feminine quality to it, which then can like be turned into homophobia. I think everyone is just so nervous about what we're meant to do and how we should be behaving, particularly in the UK, like we're quite an awkward bunch.
We are.
I think a lot of us really like to conform and like the kind of the stability of being like, I'm just going to do what other people are doing. I don't want to draw too much attention to myself. And so I think then that's where a lot of that like insecurity comes from, and when you're seeing someone doing things differently. Because also I'm not doing it like for attention or to be like wild and different, but it's like, hey, this is what I'm doing.
But isn't it funny that you're not removing your hair, which grows there naturally, and you're having to justify and say that I'm not doing it to be wild or different. It's just I'm just leaving my hair there where it's grown. That's all. I'm just leaving it there, really, because it's there. Why do I have to remove it? But the pressure is so much, and also like that, I guess like that visceral response that you're talking about, especially for men, that it's like disgusting or it's gross or ugh. Whereas like if you go back to the 80s, like bush was the thing, that was desirable. That's what, everyone wanted.
And it all like everything with bodies is very cyclical in terms of what is perceived as attractive, what is the kind of like ideal, which is also strange when you're thinking about especially body type of being like, let's try not to make bodies fashionable because they are literally just bodies. Like it's all different all the time. We can't try, like I can't change my like skeletal structure to be taller or have wider hips or whatever. Anyway, that's like a rant for another day maybe.
Yeah. But I think it's we live in a capitalist society and everything makes money, doesn't it? If you can make people feel insecure, if you can tell people that something about them is wrong, if you can sell somebody something that promises to give them this thing, then it's this real like cycle that's perpetuated. Whereas if you can break out of that, even if because I think I had a while where I was like, do I want to wear makeup? Do I need to wear makeup? Am I wearing makeup for other people? Am I wearing makeup for myself? I don't really know anymore. But that's when I kind of broke up with the idea that I have to wear makeup or I have to look a certain way. And I gave myself the freedom to wear it or not wear it. And so I think at some point you have to have those questions.
And it's hard on all of us, because I think suddenly then feeling the pressure that we all have to have these like very politically active, aware decision-making things where like we're all hypocritical, we're all doing different things. And like I wish that we could normalize like not knowing is a valid answer and a valid place of being. With the makeup thing of being like, I don't know, I'll see how I feel, but like none of us need to like properly put a stake in the ground and be like, this is my decision, this is what I'm sticking to, because we change our minds all the time.
I go backwards and forwards all the time, and that's why I never say never about anything, because I just think, I don't know right now, and if I don't know, that's okay. And I know, or I do know as a 40-year-old, is that there are things that I've said I'll never do again that I've done again, or that I would never do that, and then I've done them. So because I've gained a different perspective, or I'm in a different place in my life. So I think that is something that maybe it comes a little bit with age, but also, I think saying you don't know is a valid reason, and just understanding that everyone's different and they're allowed to kind of do the things that they want to do.
Yeah, totally. It feels really important to like speak. You can make decisions about who you are and what you want now, but not holding on to them so tightly.
It's different. It's going to change.
It's weird. It's weird. Yeah.
And everyone's different. I see quite a lot of younger women who are like, I'll never have like fillers, or I'll never have like Botox or any of those things. And I just think you might never. Yeah. But also when you're 40 or 50, you might feel really different.
You might change your mind. Yeah. I don't feel tied to any of those like future decision-making things, because I can't speak in the same way that like I can't speak for a past version of myself. I can look back and be like, what the fuck are you doing? That was a mistake. But like, I didn't know that back then. I don't know what I'm going to want to know, want to do in the future.
Just think, get on with it and do what you can do from the place that you're in right now.
Agree.
So I haven't even asked you my first question yet, so that's good.
Sorry, if you get me in a good mood, I'm just really like, I'm very hermety when I want to. And then when I'm actually feeling switched on, I'm like, I can chat forever.
She's on. We got her switched on. Right. So you, as I said in the introduction, you're a sex educator.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So what that means is that I come from an educational background where I went into schools and taught relationships and sex education. There's now a curriculum in England and Wales and Scotland as well, but it's slightly different for like the relationship and sex ed curriculum. So I spent a long time going into schools, teaching about all of that stuff from like year 7 to 11-year-olds right up to like university age, and was also linked to clinics as well. So able to like signpost, and I ran like a free condom distribution scheme. So I was the person giving out like tens of thousands of condoms a year, just being like, go, go, go. So for me, it's really important that we're pairing like the politics around how we teach about sex and relationships, the educational side, the clinical side, general well-being, like all of that kind of sits together. And then I started getting asked loads of questions from adults. So I go into a school, teach a lesson about contraception, and then at the end, as I was packing up, the teacher would come to me and go, thank you, actually, that was really useful. I have this question about the coil because I'm not really sure what to do about this, or da-da-da-da. Like realizing that all the teachers had very similar questions to the young people, because we didn't get any good sex ed. Like my sex education was rubbish. I got some, which is better than most people.
A lot of people, yeah.
But it was still really awful, and it didn't include the sex that I was going to want to have. It was very much like heterosexual, penis in a vagina, make a baby, done. And so it's, trying to do my bit to reframe what that looks like. And now a lot of my work is with adults, because I think all of us are trying to play catch up, because we didn't get lots of that foundational information when we were younger.
Yeah, but do you think that, young people now are getting good sex education? Because there must be so much information coming at them. And I guess it depends who's delivering that curriculum.
Yeah.
Because I really think that, like, for me personally, the sex education that I had was about this big. And also I got kicked out for laughing because the video that I was made to watch was people my age who were given bags of flour to pretend they were babies and they stuck eyes and wool hair on them. That was it. Like that was the sex education. Like it was just about don't get pregnant and this is how you have safe sex. And most of that was aimed at women, at the girls in my class, not the boys. They were just, not you just do what you want. And so there was never ever any talk about pleasure. There was never a mention of like the clitoris or like masturbation or any of those things. So is it different now?
It is different, but it still varies massively. Like I think for lots of people, I think so many people will have similar experiences to what you're talking about. There's the way that sex education is delivered can be really gendered, of like boys get put into a room and get spoken about sort of wet dreams and wanking. People of every gender have wet dreams and masturbate.
Yeah.
So, but it's like, that's the acceptable thing for boys.
To talk about that.
And girls get put into one room and get taught about periods and not getting pregnant.
Yeah.
And there's no, like, there's some conversation about pleasure when it's about talking aimed at sort of boys and young men, but even then it's a bit of a joke. Like it's not, we don't look at wanking and masturbation very kindly. But in the curriculum now, the word pleasure is not used once. Because I think parents and teachers are really nervous about talking about pleasure, because I guess the fear is that it's like instructing young people and, going into some, rightly so, like really sort of dodgy areas where you don't want to be giving like hands-on advice. But then by blocking out the conversation, it stops loads of people questioning why they might want to have sex, and centering like playfulness and joy and fun in it.
Yeah.
That was a message that I had to find out for myself, and I'd already been having sex for like 8 years before I was like, oh, I can have sex and I can have fun.
Yeah. But I think that's the experience of so many women, is having sex for a long period of time before they realise that actually sex isn't just about their partner's pleasure, it's also about their pleasure. And the thing is, I get it that people are scared about, handing young people an instruction book for how... I had sex when I was 15. Just because you don't talk about it, just because you don't tell someone how to have pleasure whilst doing it, doesn't mean they're not going to do it. And it's strange to me because I'm an adult now, but I know that kids are still going to be doing exactly what I was doing. Yeah. So the majority of kids are having sex when they're really young, and it's going to be shit sex for a long time because none of us want to give them the information they need. Then they'll go and watch like, the porn that's out there that's very much like heteronormative and male pleasure centered. And that makes it even worse.
Yeah. There's so much that needs to be done to improve the curriculum of what sex education is like in schools and other settings. But it's also about having the right people going in and delivering it, and being able to kind of really relate and humanize a lot of this stuff, because there have been some studies, I can't remember who did it off the top of my head, but it was like a couple of years ago, that was talking about like delivery is as important as content when it comes to all of this stuff. Because me being able to stand in front of a classroom being like, I don't care if you all laugh at me, I feel pretty unshakable, you can ask me any question, I know a way to like respond where I'm giving you information, but it's in a very appropriate way.
You're comfortable talking about it.
Because also I've heard horror stories from students being like, oh yeah, our maths teacher did some sex education as part of the curriculum, but ended up talking about like his sex life. We were like, that's so not appropriate in any way. But if you're asking a teacher who is already like overstretched, underpaid, to then do this, and they've got all of their own emotional baggage and shame about sex, you need to have the right people in those rooms to ask questions of younger people and to be able to answer questions as well.
I find it so baffling that we live in a world where sex is something that pretty much all adults are going to do in their lifetime, and yet we are so shit at having like conversations about what actual real like sex is and what it can be and how good it can be. We're shit at it. We're just shit.
It's terrible how nervous we've got about all of this. And we presume that like in the past people were very prudish and not talking about this, but that's so not the case. Like I think now there's such an abundance of information about sex online, but we're still not very good at learning how to actually talk about it. And then you run into the risk of, like I think young people now have more resources where they can learn, but a lot of those resources are really crap. Like some of them, there are great people online doing good sex education stuff on social media platforms, even though they're having to battle like all of the censorship stuff that's going on right now. But for every one of them, there are like very clickbaity accounts that are wanting to just like get your attention and giving loads of misinformation. We go into like Andrew Tate territory then. Like it's, you know, I think it's really, young people I hope have like a higher level of like online literacy than we do. But still, there's just so, it's a mess. It's such a hot mess.
It's a real hot mess.
And we're just trying to like chip away at it, being like, let's have better conversations, please.
Please. But that's, you know, that's kind of my point as well. Like you might as well learn about sex properly in school, because otherwise kids are just going to go and do their own research. And that research, like you say, could come from any Tom, Dick, Harry or Andrew. And then, you know, you don't know what they're going to be taking on board. So surely it would be better to be like, right, okay, this is the basics. This is how it works. And, you know, and then go out there and communicate with each other. And if you are going to be having sex, talk to each other and have a better time. How did you learn about sex? Because you mentioned that you were having sex for 8 years before you started really enjoying it and realizing it was about your pleasure as well. So how did you learn about sex?
So I was the same as you. I first had sex when I was 15 and I was a teenager when Skins came out.
Right, okay, yeah.
So that was very formative for my teenage years of being like, oh, okay, there aren't that many adults in my life who are ready to talk about this. I'm also too nervous. Like my mum, bless her, was really up for having these conversations, that I didn't want to have them with her because I felt shame and confusion and didn't quite know how to talk about it. Also, I'm queer, and that was something that I was kind of very aware of, but in such a suppressed way as a teenager. And I think that put more pressure to like perform a particular type of sexuality.
Right, okay.
But I was 13 when Skins came out and was like, okay, cool, I'll try and do that. And I did. So I had quite a messy teenage time. And like the first people that I had sex with were like nice people, but we just didn't know how to talk about it. Like my boyfriend at the time we were both so awkward because no one had said, you know, like you can chat about this and it's okay if it's going to be a bit awkward or clunky. Like I was so fixated on what it meant that I actually stopped being in the moment and feeling present and feeling like, how do I want to do this? Is this something I want to do? I think I wanted to do it. I don't regret when I first had like penetrative sex. Also, don't get me started on that of like, how do we talk about first time sex? It's so hetero. It's so like a penis must be going into something, a vagina. Like I'd actually had sexual experiences before then that had been really pleasurable and exciting, but I hadn't thought about them because they weren't with a boy and they weren't like that kind of sex. My sex ed was pretty rubbish. There was some, but it was very, I remember we had like in our biology class, because I went to an all girls school. Yeah. So it was very like periods, pregnancy, don't fuck this up. But we watched in like a biology lesson, we watched a video of a woman giving birth, which was so traumatic when you're like 14 years old. But then because it was like one of those tellies on a trolley that came out, our teacher at the end pressed like record to wind the video back, and we watched the whole thing fast forwarded but in reverse. So we just have this like image burned into my brain of like just going straight back in again. So yeah, that wasn't the place where we were going to learn, and it wasn't somewhere where I felt encouraged to be able to ask questions. Yeah, because it was very like,
this is it. That's it.
That's right. That's wrong. Don't do this.
No space for questions. And I think in that situation, you can tell the adult feels uncomfortable, so that you know they're probably not going to be able to answer your question anyway. You just mentioned like losing your virginity. I lost my virginity to somebody who was really nice as well, like my boyfriend at the time. And after we were like, he was a little bit older than me, and we were away. I was like part of this organisation called Young Farmers, long story. And we were away at like this conference thing, and it was basically just like a way for everyone to go away and get drunk and, you know, stay in a hotel and do whatever they wanted. So on the same night that I lost my virginity, my best friend lost her virginity and they were friends as well, the guys. But then
that's so sweet.
The guy that I lost my virginity to decided to celebrate that he would go down to the hotel bar where all of our friends were congregated and waiting, and did 11 shots of tequila. and proceeded to spend the rest of the night throwing up.
And like, in hindsight, did that need to happen?
I mean,
it did, and we all make messy mistakes, and that's allowed.
But yeah, so that was that. And again, like, it wasn't a horrible experience. It wasn't really traumatic, but you just had no idea, like, really what you were doing. And like, luckily he was kind of like quite gentle and, you know, respectful. But the idea of foreplay, like, if someone doesn't tell you what that is, when you're younger, all you really know about is fingering and like penetration.
And no teenager knows what they're doing with fingering. That's
They really don't. They really, really don't. It's a terrible idea.
I like the amount of time that I spent just being fingered, but in the worst way, by boys going like, this is terrible. But then also I didn't have the language or the confidence to be like, this isn't actually working for me. So again, if your sex education cannot start and end with put a condom on, it's like, what happens if there's something that is a bit as painful or just kind of like uncomfortable?
How do you talk about that?
What if something isn't feeling as good and you want to change things? Like, how do we find and develop that language? I think it's still something that I find myself coming up against sometimes, of going, if you're like, oh God, this feels really great and you're being great, but like, is this taking too long? Like, should I be a bit faster? Like, any of that stuff, I think we're also prone to be very overthinky with sex in a very external way, because we're judging ourselves against this like hypothetical, this is the ideal way to have sex.
Yeah, like,
and that just doesn't exist.
Like, it should be perfect, and and the person you're with should, you know, get it right and know exactly what to do and how to do it. And you're like, you should be exactly the same for them. But everyone has a different body, so everyone's map essentially is going to be different, and you need to know how to navigate that map. And you're only going to be able to do that, learn how to communicate. It's that simple, isn't it?
Yeah, it's wild that this is something that we just don't have any space for. I wish, like, obviously there's loads of important stuff to learn in school, and school isn't the only place or way that we learn, but the fact that there is so little time taken up about sex, bodies and relationships, money and death.
Yeah.
They feel like three absolute fundamentals. If by the time someone is 16 or 18 and leaving school, can you leave school at 16 now? I don't know. I think you have to go to 18 now.
Rude.
Anyway, if you're someone who is leaving school, to have some literacy and understanding about those three things, because they are inevitable. Even if you're someone who is asexual or not interested in like romantic relationships, we are in an incredibly sexualized world.
Yeah, you need to understand it and how and why things play out. The same with money and the same with death, because grief, death is something we're all going to experience. Yeah. It's going to happen to all of us, whether, you know, and I hope it doesn't happen to people for a long time, but it will. And then when it does, as someone who experienced it for the first time when I was 9, your whole world collapses and no one around you knows what to do. They go, what?
And in a way, I don't wish grief on people, but I think
it's going to happen
when I first experienced it, it was actually helpful, because it meant I'm better able to chat to people as they're going through it. I've got a friend who recently lost someone, and part of the thing that we've been speaking about is just her surprise of being like, oh my God, I've never had to do this before. I don't know what I'm doing. And, you know, finding people who have gone through it before and can understand it. But that's another thing. And also money, I just don't understand. Yeah. So I needed that.
But I think with like sex and with death, it's like the thing, if we don't talk about it and if we keep it hidden, just don't have to worry about it. And it doesn't work like that, either one of those things, because they do happen, they are happening. And like you say, when it does, we're not armed with the tools to deal with either one of them. And it's terrible.
Absolutely not.
When it comes to talking about sex and our bodies and nudity, there is generally a lot of kind of shame, embarrassment attached to those topics. Have you always been confident to talk about them? And if not, how did you get to a place of confidence?
I definitely was not confident. And I think a lot of my confidence now is recognizing how important it would have been to see that confidence in other people. Not confident about it as a teenager, very insecure about my body, in my body, very ashamed of like any pleasure that I experienced, like in terms of masturbation. That was something that I like fully denied and like withheld from myself for a really long time. It was only when I was in my early 20s that I started to like read and research a little bit more into all of these unknown things. So I got really into doing lots of like research about the history of porn and like the prevalence of it from like 2007 when Pornhub was
Right,
first
okay,
on
yeah.
the scene and how that's changed the industry, like got really interested in like the decriminalization of sex work, that all of those little interests started forming a bit more of an identity for me. Mm-hmm. And then when I started working for Brooke, which is the sexual health charity that I was with for 5 years, and I'm an ambassador for them now, that was almost like an invitation. I knew that I wanted to work with young people. I knew that I wanted to do stuff in sexual health, and actually being in a classroom and having to talk about this confidently was the starting point for me, actually then implementing that into my life. But that was about confidence wider. It wasn't only about sex.
Yeah.
Like before I went into classrooms, I was terrified of public speaking. Like I would go red, I would shake visibly, like I couldn't speak in a meeting with like more than 5 people. And suddenly to go like, okay, now I've got like
Off you go.
30, 14-year-olds in front of me and I'm just gonna make it work. I think that has allowed me to kind of find my rhythm with the way that I communicate and also be more informal. Like, the way that we can teach or converse about this stuff and it not feel really stuffy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not feel uncomfortable and not feel like attached to kind of shame or embarrassment. One of the things that you mentioned is obviously that when you do go into schools, sometimes it's the adults, the teachers who afterwards have got loads of questions for you and things that they want to know. And also you said about, like with yourself, that sex wasn't pleasurable for you until you've been having sex for quite a long time, which I think is an experience of a lot of people who are already having sex, especially like women. What is going wrong? Why is it that we go for so long as adults with these big unknowns and it's something that we're doing? Is it because we don't know where to go to get the answers?
I think it's a little bit that we don't know where to get the answers from, but also it's just like that quietness about these more intimate, vulnerable parts of our lives is normalized. If you are in a family, a wider community, friendship groups where this stuff isn't really spoken about openly, what incentive do you have to be the brave person who starts talking about it?
Everyone
like, it's scary.
I was masturbating last night and...
So I mean, sometimes we need to be that friend to just open up the chat, because recently I've had a string of conversations of friends who are also in long-term relationships who like up until this one conversation have been like, everything's fine, it's great. But I'm 30 now.
Yeah.
Navigating, no one has taught me how to be in a long-term relationship because it changes. It's not the same. You can't sustain that like first year, absolute honeymoon phase, everything's perfect. And yet we're taught that that's what a relationship should be like all the time to be successful. So then everyone's walking around with this shame of going like, actually, my relationship's really difficult right now. And that doesn't mean that we don't want to be together, but it's hard. And like, mates of mine, me being able to open up the conversation has allowed lots of my friends to then share things of going, oh yeah, actually, like we're having a good time, but like, where's the sex gone? Like, it's just stopped. And it's not because we don't care about each other, but we've just lost our vibe or like whatever it is. I think the older we get, the more we have that internal pressure to be like responsible and know what we're doing and not need to ask for help and all that kind of stuff. And that ties in.
I think when we have those discussions, like with our friendship groups, it can make us feel so much better, reassured, normalized. Like if everyone's there and they're ready to be authentic and tell the truth, and you're just like, oh my God, it's not just me.
Yeah.
Like, thank you for that. I recently went and had a fertility MOT, and so
how did you find it?
It was like fine.
Yeah.
I mean, I filmed it and I will put the video up, but I was looking back through the footage and some of the things I said to my fertility doctor were probably not okay. He looked very awkward. And
awkward. Won't include that
at times. No, they're definitely all in there. But so what I found really interesting is, while the so it's like an internal exam. So while the camera's like inside me, essentially looking at the different parts of my body, there is so much about my own body as a 40-year-old woman that I do not know about. Like in terms of, all of where everything is, like everything's function, what everything looks like all of those kind of things. And I just think I've got to 40. I like to think of myself as, quite worldly. I've had a lot of sex in my life. I've had a really great time. But I did not know, should I say, the inner workings of my reproductive system. Yeah. Like, and then, then there's the next phase of menopause or perimenopause and then menopause, which luckily now people are starting to talk about, but that's never been
it still feels like quite an unknown.
why are we so bad at talking about and knowing our own bodies? What's the block?
There's no information given to us that is accurate. If you think of like so many medical textbooks still, I mean, less so now, but like clitoris is just fully missing. It was only like 1996 that the anatomy of the clitoris was first like fully unpacked like in research. And that's ludicrous because for like thousands and thousands of years, people have known what a clitoris is and what it does, but we're not given, like, just so much of this stuff is not backed by science and research. And that's not the only place that it should be coming from as well. I don't want it to be like only medical officials can tell us what's going on, but there's so little information that breeds misinformation and fear. Like, I didn't know until really quite recently. I've got a friend who's studying to be like a gynae doctor. Yeah. That you know the diagram we see of the reproductive system where you've got like the ovaries here and the little fallopian tubes. Yeah. That's not how it all fits in the body. No. It's all like squished together and jumbled up because obviously it is.
That's what I was expecting to see on my scan. I was like, hold on, that's not how it's supposed to be. I thought it was going to be like that. And then you've got the two bits there and you've got that there. But there's all the other organs in there as well. There's your stomach, your bladder, together.
It's so wild. And even like there's these kind of like membrane that's like a wing that goes from the sides of the uterus up the fallopian tubes. Yeah. So if it is stretched out, it looks different. Oh my God, my friend, one of my best mates, didn't realize until, I'm going to say 3 years ago, we were talking, and she has a vulva, she has a vagina, but because of all the diagrams of a vagina just going down like a tube, she had never conceptualized the fact that a vagina is closed. She just presumed that it was like an open tube the whole time. And so I had to be like, babe, no, like it's like all the walls are like touching each other. We're not walking around with like this tube just like
just gaping open. Anything that wants to crawl up there.
But like,
come on.
Obviously she knew that in her own body, but she'd never seen diagrams or anything that just made that obvious. And also, you know, that the vagina like concertinas, like it stretches when we're aroused. So a vagina most of the time is like actually really quite narrow. Mm-hmm. There's all this stuff. It's so interesting.
It is. It's quite narrow unless you've had sex with loads of people, and then it just gets baggier and baggier and baggier.
Oh my God.
If you listen to the men on the internet.
This was way before like, you know, the terrible Andrew Tate times, when a long time ago when I was in a school talking to a group of girls about just some topic, and they were all really obsessed with body count, and they were like, yeah, but that's disgusting, like because your body changes. I was like, okay, I'm curious, let's see what you think. It was like, all right, at what point does a woman's body count get, like, how many people do they have to sleep with for their body to change, for their vagina to become loose? There was this group of girls, they were like, okay, we'll think about it. They all like assembled and were whispering in a group, and then they came back to me and they were like, 5. 5's when you start getting loose. And
I've had a full prolapse.
Same. It was really, but so interesting to hear that was their logic. And then, you know, we spoke about it and I unpacked it and challenged that quite a lot. And by the end, they were like, yeah, okay, maybe I'm not.
It's
maybe that's not true.
It doesn't even make any sense. Mm-hmm. That means that penises just get worn down then, do they? And just get smaller and smaller.
But also I think that people have a very limited idea of sexual pleasure and what you could do, because if you are, you know, I've learned lots of this initially from my gay male friends, but now like in my queer community, like people normalizing fisting. Because it's not, I have great fisting hands because I've got tiny hands and wrists.
I've got massive hands. If it's me,
so that's a bit of a challenge. And also you've got lovely nails, which maybe isn't as good. But like the idea...
It's not this.
Fisting is not this.
Oh.
Fisting is this. You want to do... Because that's not going anywhere.
Yeah, that's what I've always thought. How do you get that in?
For some people, I guess if you're really hardcore, once a fist or a hand is inside someone, you can do that. But generally,
so you're making it like.
So it's more just like the widest bit there.
Yeah, but mine's quite wide though.
Yeah, I mean,
some would like that.
You have a wild old time, but
a wide old time.
When we're thinking about being more inventive with sex, when you're not just like it's got to be a penis or fingers, you know, like there are toys that are wild and wonderful, going like what does the sensation feel like if you're someone who's into like a variety of different sizes and girths and stuff. That doesn't like I don't know. It just really frustrates me when people are like, it's a penis going in and that should be normal and anything else is going to like change your body or like confront our idea of what sexual play is meant to look like.
Yeah, I just think if you want to do it and it's safe for you and your partner, then you can do it.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, that's the rules.
And then we should be talking about it a bit more, because then you might hear something that someone's done and gone, oh,
I quite fancy
I didn't know, maybe I'll like that. I don't know.
I might give that a go. See how it works. Just, I think, don't shove things don't put anything up there that you can't get out. It's got you just got to be careful. So you don't want to end up in the hospital being like,
Yeah, like if you're putting anything inside you, use actual sex toys that are designed for that specific thing. Yeah. They're the rules. Flared base for anal toys.
So it doesn't just...
We don't want that, because it can happen.
It's happened to a lot of people. If you listen to nurses' stories,
oh my God,
there's always people in the hospital with different things up there, and the stories for how they got there, they're my favourite.
My friend used to work in A&E, and a guy once rocked up, and the thing that I always remember about this story is that he travelled to the hospital by bus. So he arrived and he had an entire butternut squash up his arse.
What did he make an excuse, or he didn't? No.
He was like, this has happened. But what a fucking trooper to get to the hospital on a bus.
On a bus. It's like, it's not worth calling an ambulance
to be like,
over.
150, I'll just, it's not.
The bus like bounces around a bit as well. I don't think that's a good idea.
So yeah, not ideal. He was fine, he was okay, but...
Don't try this at home, everyone. You've had it here first. Butternut squashes are a no-no.
No.
What are some of the biggest misconceptions about sex and our bodies that you've come up against? I mean, we just spoke about the body count one.
Yeah, so many. Oh my God, where do I even want to start? I think the body count one is massive. There's also one that I love talking about, is trying to address straight men's absolute terror and fear of anal play. Like the idea that certain activities or certain parts of your body are linked to a particular sexuality. Like I remember being at school and at uni of that thing of like any guy who had anything anal happen to him, it's like automatically gay, even if it's a woman doing to them. But I don't think we talk about prostates enough. I love them. I wish I had a prostate.
I love prostates, me.
Prostates are so
That's
cool.
what you should have on your t-shirt. I wish I had a prostate.
I wish I had a prostate. Yeah, okay, I'll make that happen.
Send me one.
Because it's this really, and I think for so many people, particularly straight men, there's this real untapped resource there of pleasure. And if people are so nervous about what that means, if we've got so much internal homophobia that people don't feel comfortable exploring something like that, I just think that's a real shame. We've like all of the misconceptions, I think, are that panic of like, am I normal? And am I doing this right? And I wish the kind of blanket response that I wish I could give everyone is like, everyone is different. So trying to strive for a version of normal just is going to make you miserable, because it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't exist.
None of us are wanting the same thing. None of us are feeling the same thing or like thinking the same stuff. We've all got to get better at being like evolving, changing sexual humans in terms of our desire. Like the stuff I want out of sex now is very different to what I wanted 5 or 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm excited for what comes
next.
Soon. Like it's,
And I think I say this all the time. There's one planet, but there's 8 billion people. That means there's 8 billion different worlds, because every single one of us is experiencing the world through our own experiences and perceptions. So it's going to be different for everybody.
Yeah, totally.
So the idea that there's going to be one size fits all for anything, let alone, something as personal as sex, is ludicrous. Yeah. But then, like you say, because there is so much shame around it, people think they have to fit into this box, and you can't. You just got to jump out the box, jump out your box or in the box, whichever way you want to do it. And you just like try things and see if you enjoy them and have a good time, because it's your life. You won't get to have it again, and there might come a day when you're older where you can't have sex anymore. And then you're going to be like, oh.
Although I'm determined, as long as I live, I really hope I get to be old, and then I get to be having fun, wild sex when I'm old as well.
You just got to keep yourself limber. You
Well,
know?
but also sex can just change a little bit. There was a study that came out last year called Magnificent Sex, which was researchers in the States. So much of like science research about sex is about like solving dysfunctions. So it's getting to like a kind of averageness of sex. And they looked at that and were like, there's no studies about what makes sex amazing, like what makes someone a really amazing lover. So this is a book, it's called Magnificent Sex. And they interviewed loads and loads of people from lots of different kind of identities and lifestyles. So there were like people from the kink community, people who were like polyamorous, but there was a really big contingent of older people because they were all like, yeah, the sex that I was having in my 20s was shit. I didn't have the language to ask and talk about what I wanted. I was so wrapped up in like hating my body or feeling that someone was judging me. And actually the older that they got, the less of a shit they gave and the more fun that they were having. And so people in their 80s being like, yeah, I'm not having, you know, I'm not getting in like that wild position anymore, but I'm still having sexual pleasure and feeling intimate and connected and adventurous with my partner or partners.
Well, as long as it all,
I love it.
You know, as long as it all still works, that you can get pleasure and experience pleasure, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
You know, why wouldn't you use it? It's there. Even if it hasn't been, even if the clitoris hasn't been put in a book or wasn't put in a book until 1996.
Wild.
It's been around since the humans have been around. It must have been. It can't have just appeared from nowhere. I'm thinking this through as I'm saying it. But it's, you know.
It did. I don't think it just appeared. No. Now I want to know about different mammals and like clitorises in other animals. I don't have that information, but I'm going to look it up.
I think we're the only ones that have it. Dolphins are the only other mammals I think that have sex for pleasure.
There are other ones, bonobos, which are, so again, like we're, in terms of evolution, we're seen for, historically since Darwin, we were seen as like our closest relatives in the mammal world, chimps. Yeah. But bonobos, which are another type of monkey, are like just as close to us.
Even more.
But are like, in terms of evolution stuff. And they operate in a completely different way. So chimpanzees, very patriarchal, very like protective and aggressive and hierarchical. Bonobos, matriarchy, so all ran by women, very collective women, female bonobos, very collective. They use sex for pleasure, but also to like communicate and to diffuse tension and arguments. They like share food and feed each other. It's a complete like very non-monogamous. It's such a different reframing that for the last couple hundred years we've been going like, oh, we're like chimps, therefore it's like patriarchal society, all that stuff.
No, but I mean the world we live in now is like we're living in the chimp world, but bonobos are showing us what we could have.
Yeah.
Just let us be in charge. That's all you got to do, men. Step down. We're coming through.
And let's use sex for fun and play a little bit more.
Well, that's what it's supposed to be about, isn't it? It's not just reproduction.
No.
It's more so about that. Why would we have a clitoris if it was just about that?
And all these other amazing body parts and
it's
stuff
not just that. Obviously, the prostate. You've already brought that one up.
My favourite.
On your T-shirt. What are some of the biggest challenges that you see people having with sex and relationships, perhaps that they kind of talk to you about?
Oh, I think something that I'm finding a lot right now, so I'm working on my second book at the minute, which is all about non-monogamy and polyamory, open relationships. That's something I've been doing for a really long time. And I think we just need more advice and more experiences out there about it. So a question I get asked a lot is people who are interested in opening up their relationship, but really nervous about talking to their partner about it because it feels like such a big thing to say and put on the table. And also, understandably, could make someone feel a lot of panic or insecurity or nerves, you know, and kind of rocking the boat of going, if this is something that you want, it's not too dissimilar from like talking about a kink with a partner of going like, actually, I think I'd really be into this because once you've said it,
you can't
it's out there.
Yeah, that's it.
And like, hopefully people respond well to that stuff, but you never know entirely. So yeah, that kind of people being curious about different ways of doing relationships, but not quite sure what that looks like for them and how to implement it. I think I still have lots of people who ask just like really basic questions about contraception and STI testing and like about anonymity of like, can I go to a sexual health clinic and like, is it going to be traced back to my GP? Are people going to find out? There's still all of that kind of fear. And then I get asked lots about sex toys because I love sex toys. I think they are wonderful. And I think everyone should feel like able to follow that curiosity if they want to explore with them. But I'm also aware of how we can end up using sex toys a little bit as like a problem solver for all of the parts of our sex lives, where it's like, no, a sex toy is a tool that might make you feel really good and can be a fun thing to use on your own or with other people. There's lots of psychological stuff that we also need to be addressing about shame and the way that we feel comfortable and confident in ourselves. And then, you know, a little sex toy is a great addition to that as well, but it's not going to like solve all our problems.
Do people use sex toys to solve their problems? In what sense do you mean?
I think, well, I don't know. I think I feel kind of curious and maybe a bit critical of the way, especially in like more femme-led sex positivity, of just being like, woo, I have a vibrator, everything's great now. Right. Like more access to this stuff is amazing, and like destigmatizing the like people using sex toys is really essential. But I guess for me, where I'm at right now is going like, great, now what?
Yeah.
Because there's still so much like inequality, misinformation, shame that goes on, and like just us having better access to wonderful sex toys does a lot, but it doesn't change.
I think I kind of get it in a way, and I get it in the sense that, you know, like I think because masturbation, especially for women, has been seen as like so taboo, and so, you know, like something, we shouldn't do that. And if anyone at school did it, then they were known as the, you know, the girl that fingered herself or whatever it was. And so I think that kind of like, it feels quite liberating in a way to, you know, like to say, I masturbate. Like it feels quite liberating to say I masturbate, I enjoy it, and that's absolutely fine. Like it's a normal part of being an adult or a person, not even an adult. I was masturbating when I was a child. Like it's a normal part of being a human and having a human experience. And so I do kind of get that, but also I hear what you're saying at the same time. It's
And like that, hearing that is revolutionary to so many people. So it's not like putting that down at all. It's really important to be having those conversations. I'm really proud to have been able to do that myself a bit.
Thought you were like, I'm really proud to say I'm a masturbator.
I am really proud. But like I think it's also I'm really wary of not trying to be pessimistic about it, but it's like, that's so important and such a like empowering, liberating act. And then what? And then what? And then what? Because I think the more I work in this field and research more stuff, it's kind of connecting the dots and seeing how sexual pleasure and relationships feed into so many parts of our lives and so much about like the way that the world works around us. So it's kind of also that invitation to use that as a springboard to question more things about our lives and the norms that we kind of just pick up without thinking about them.
Yeah. Do you think that because obviously masturbation can become like an addiction as well, can't it? And it can become like a distraction from things in life, as can, you know, anything that's pleasurable, whether it's food, alcohol, drugs, like whatever it is. So I guess there is also that it's just like, rather than addressing maybe like your mental health or how you're actually feeling, you might just go and have a wank. I
think anything can be used as like a coping mechanism or like a distraction as well. There's some really interesting data. What's his name? Silva Neves, I think, who like has spoken about this, of kind of trying to reframe masturbation and porn as like, and sex as like addictions, because it's a sort of, it's developing a kind of dependency as a coping mechanism in other parts of our lives. It's not addictive in the same sense as like a drug or like a substance is. But yeah, I think again, lots of that comes from these things being stuff that we do fully in private. Like I love thinking about things as like a difference between a shameful secret and privacy. Like privacy is something that we have control over, ideally, of being like, this isn't something I want to share. You know, there are some like, there are kinks or different fantasies that I might have that I'm not interested in talking to a partner about, because that's something that I only really want to explore on my own. Yeah. And rather than going, oh my God, I've got this thing and like no one can ever know because it's disgusting, it's so terrible, it's going like, oh no, this is just for me. And that changes it, of going like,
it feels like much lighter.
Yeah, so we don't all, if you want to shout about this and proclaim yourself as a proud masturbator, then go for it. But also it's finding those like quiet moments where you can be comfortable in yourself and you're not hiding anything, but you're also choosing for it to just be something for you.
Yeah, I do. I get that. I really get that. And I think that
obviously that's not us.
We
that
don't,
ship has sailed.
We don't fall under that category. It's too late for us. We can't. There's no going back.
There's really no going back.
What's one thing, Ruby, that you wish everyone knew about sex?
That's such a nice question. I think framing sex with a mindset of playfulness and connection is the thing I'm most interested in right now, because connection with yourself, connection with other people, it is a way that we relate to one another in a very like bodily but also very emotional way. And that can be casual sex, that can be a 20-year-long relationship. You know, like I want everyone to approach sex with care for themselves and for other people, because I think once that's the foundation that we all kind of establish, then there's loads of really fun stuff that can come on top of that. But we're often quite keen to get to the fun stuff without thinking about that act of care. When I was little, my younger sibling, who's 3 years younger than me, asked our mum what sex was. And my mum's response was, sex is the way that grown-ups play.
Aww.
And like, that's a very appropriate way of talking about it to younger children. Like she's not like, you know, starting to chat about loads of stuff, but it's really stayed with me because it's a space where we can unwind and explore. And I really want as many people to feel able to do that and kind of excited to do that.
And I think that's kind of that's how it should be approached. And I guess that would be like the best way for it to be approached. However, you know, whether you're somebody who it really enjoys casual sex, whether you're somebody who never wants to have casual sex, like whatever way you kind of approach it, it would be lovely if everyone did that. But I don't think that's not how it is right now. And there's a lot of times the care element is missing, and the ownership and admittal of like emotions is missing as well. And sometimes it's like just a physical thing, but it's not just a physical thing. So then I think that's when it can feel not great.
Yeah. And I can say that like I have casual sex in a very caring way. Like it can happen. Doesn't mean obviously we can't control the way that other people approach and come into that. But like I've had like really caring, and again, when it's caring, I don't mean like soft and gentle and like let's pretend that we're in love for the night. Like no, but just, you know, meeting each other with humanity and like, you know, being considerate, being kind. And I have had lots of those experiences with men. I've also had terrible one-night stands with men, but also the way that my experiences of queer sex with non-binary people and with women, like that reframes it. You can still have bad casual sex with a woman, but actually there's like a different, I think everyone is having to learn so much about sex and relationships, but especially if you are queer, none of that information was particularly relevant to you to me when I was younger. So we're all trying to like figure things out and invent stuff. And so my focus on care very much comes from that, like the queer community I'm in. Even, you know, like being in a queer nightclub. I went to a straight nightclub a couple months ago. It's fucking carnage. It was terrible. Like, so just like this air of real disrespect. It felt so strange. And I guess I hadn't realized how different my nightlife experiences are, because even if there's people, you know, behaving badly, there was like a foundational thing of being like, no one's going to be an absolute dick to each other. So yeah, I think lots of people have a lot that they can learn from queer communities.
I think that's right. Because I think that there is that, it's almost like because the path has been trodden so many times, when it comes to, I guess, like heterosexual relationships, casual sex, whatever, it's like we're just going to keep walking this path. We're just going to keep treading this path. And so there's no exploration or looking at it from a different way, or how can we make this better, or, you know, what's going wrong with this, or why doesn't this work, or any of that. Whereas I guess like you're talking about within the queer community, as that path hasn't been trodden, it isn't so clear. So you're having to navigate that, and then you're much more open and aware.
Which also comes with a lot of weird baggage when you're like, oh, there isn't a roadmap. Actually, it's quite exhausting having to make one up. But along with that, there's something quite liberating about having a blank slate and trying to figure things out.
How do you, having like multiple partners, how do you manage that? Because I think like I know it's not for everyone. And when I think about myself, I just think, I'd be jealous all the time. And I'm not a jealous person if I'm in a relationship with one person, but if with the way that my mind works, have you had to overcome that? Or do you think it's just that the way that you kind of view the world is different to how I view the world, and so that's easier for you? Or do you think anyone could get to that point?
I think a bit of both. I am someone, like, I feel jealousy. It's not something, I'm not trying to like eradicate jealousy from my life, because sometimes jealousy can be a really good indicator that something's not quite right, that like I'm feeling insecure about something, like I need more reassurance, or like this situation doesn't feel as comfortable for me and the other people in it. So it's definitely about like jealousy still being there, but not holding on to it quite so tightly. I guess the big thing that's been reframed for me through all of this, but again, you know, I was very much a monogamous person for a long time, and that wasn't something I ever was thinking about changing while I was in monogamous relationships. But just having my eyes opened a little bit to this world, I'm thinking like, why does my partner's like romantic and sexual fidelity to me, what does that mean? Because for some people that is really important, and like that's something that I have a lot of time and respect for. But I guess for me, my partner having sex with someone else or having another partner doesn't actually mean that they care about me any less. And I think when both of us are able to have enriching, loving relationships as well as each other, I think it brings more than like the idea of taking things away. We have a very like scarcity mindset approach when it comes to love, of like, you've only got like
this much
100% of love, and actually if it all goes to that one person, there's no more. And actually it's not this thing that we run out of. You know, love is really, I know it sounds very like hippie, but love is really expansive, you know, like someone doesn't have a second kid and they're like, oh sorry, I'm just gonna have to chop the love I had for this first kid in half to give it to the other one. Like it's this thing that's just within us. So that has been very helpful for me. And it's, it just works. It works really well. If you're curious to try it, you can buy my book in a couple of months.
And then you're about to read all about it.
Yeah.
And maybe kind of, I guess, learn some of the things that you've learned ahead of, you know, moving into that space.
And it's also like, then how do we learn? I think it can give lots of monogamous people really useful tools and perspectives. This isn't about trying to persuade people to do relationships in a different way, but I'm very fascinated because in the last 5 years or so, there are so many more people who are interested in this, but there aren't that many resources available.
Can I ask a question? Because I've had a couple of people on this show, normally guys, who say that they want a polyamorous relationship, but the way that has to work is they can have relationships with other women, but the women can only also have relationships with other women.
Yeah, which
is that polyamory?
Well, I mean, I guess in theory it is if everyone's on board with that.
Right, okay, yeah.
There's a phrase for that, which is like the one penis policy, which I think has quite a lot of fragile masculinity in there, of being like, only what, like my penis can be the only one that's here. I think for a long time I was really against that as a concept, especially if that's being enforced by the man. Then I'm like, alarm bells ringing, that's not feeling like a good vibe for me. But I am someone who, like, I sleep with people of all genders, but I'm mostly interested in sleeping with women and non-binary people, and there are penises within that, but actually like right now I'm much more focused on like feminine energy in sex. Which again doesn't necessarily mean the gender or the genitals of the person. But so in that way, I'm kind of like, oh, well, I wouldn't want someone to give a rule to me of being like, you can't sleep with someone who's a man or someone who has a penis. But I can see that for some people, they might be going into non-monogamy, especially if it's like a seemingly straight couple, a man and a woman, and the woman has recently come out as bi or queer. This happens a lot. I speak to a lot of like new nervous bisexual women who are like, I'm opening up my relationship because I really want to sleep with women, and they actually might not have any interest in dating men. So in that way, that's okay, but that's not a rule that has been coming from a man saying this is the way that this works.
It's
I think I have a bit
compromise.
more issues with that. But again, who knows?
The one penis policy. that's the title of my book, coming soon. No, I haven't written it. I think there's
1,000 penis
one
policy.
man to my pum pum. Yeah. 1,000 penis policy. I'm not in triple digits, not yet.
I stopped counting.
Yeah, I don't know if I can count anymore.
It was really liberating. I got to a certain number and was like, I can't remember what number. I think it was like 40 or 50. And I was like, why am I keeping count of this?
Yeah,
also, what is sex? Because if I'm going, it was really nice being like, I don't
if
know
you're
anymore.
sleeping with people with vulvas, even if there's penetration involved and it's like, a toy or something else, does that still count as sex?
Well, yeah. I mean, to me, I think blurring my idea of what sex is has been really useful, of being like, it felt sexual. Sex. There we go. Not one thing has to happen.
Right, my numbers just trebled.
But also even like, I've gone to sex parties before and then what are you doing? Like counting how many people you were involved with? What does that mean? What does that look like? It kind of feels arbitrary to me now. Yeah. And it's nice having that as like an unknown.
It's quite freeing, isn't it? Because also, what are we really doing counting the numbers?
I'm not counting the amount of times I've had sex. Yeah. Like, why does it matter?
Also, if I count the amount of times I've had an orgasm, I'm basically a virgin.
Okay. If we're counting that as the way of marking successful sex, which I don't agree with, but then my count would be very different.
Yeah.
Because
sex can be great without orgasms. Don't get me wrong.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, they can be difficult to come by. Literally. See what I did there? Really great. What's the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to you in bed?
Oh, okay. Yeah. There is something that happened when I first started sleeping with women that was not ideal.
You're really hyping it up now. I'm scared.
No, it's because you asked that and I was like, fuck, what's going on? And it just landed on a thing of going, oh yeah, that was quite embarrassing actually. That wasn't great. But I hooked up with someone and we were both quite drunk and very, like fun, but a bit sloppy sex. And she went down on me and I was having a great time, really enjoying myself. But I was a little bit more enthusiastic with my hips than I realized at the time, or that she realized at the time. And when we woke up in the morning, her like whole upper lip had swollen and underneath there was like a blood blister. I'd like bruised her entire lip. Because we were just going a bit too hard. And I was completely mortified. And this was like one of the first women that I'd slept with. And so I was just like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I've like broken your face. And she was like, look, it's fine. I think, I hope that she's okay.
I'm sure that healed.
But also I think she slightly wore it as a bit of a badge of honor. But for me,
you were having a good time.
So embarrassed about that.
No, before that you were having a good time.
I was having a great time, but maybe too much of a good thing. Maybe.
She didn't notice, did she?
She
at the
didn't
time?
notice
It's
either.
the alcohol as well.
Yeah, but let's not.
No, I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm just saying, sometimes those things do happen.
And I'm living proof of it. But,
Feels good at the time, but you get a fat lip in the morning and the one on your face. Also, you can have a fat lip.
Maybe that was more me then.
Yeah. I mean, you didn't get the...
Fat lip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Matchy fat lips. Lovely. But you didn't, you avoided the blood blister.
I did, yeah.
Which was good for you. What's the wildest thing that you've done in bed?
Ooh. It's funny knowing how to like judge this. I've got really into wrestling recently. Like blank face.
No, because in my head straight away, there was a documentary. Who showed me this? One of my friends showed me this. There was a documentary about a guy and there was like a website where you could meet other people to go and meet them just to wrestle.
Oh, I want to watch that.
And it was like a turn on for them. So in my head, I went straight there. I was thinking about that.
Well,
Wait, so is it wrestling that leads to sex?
Yeah. So my friend Lola Jean, who is amazing, she's an educator out in the States and she does she's like the world record holder for the amount of squirt produced. Like, she's incredible.
She's a world record holding squirter.
Yeah, she can squirt like a full Pimm's jug.
Is that in the Guinness Book of World Records?
It's not in it was like monitored by someone, so it's legit, but the Guinness World Book of Records thought it was too risky to put in the book.
So she can do a whole Pimm's jug in one go, or she has to do multiple?
And like broke science, because up until that moment they were like, oh, it's only 1,200 millilitres that the bladder can hold. And she was like, well, I've done 1,700 or something.
Where's
so
it
it's not the
coming from?
bladder. Who knows? There's not enough research, but it's amazing.
Magical.
So she is amazing for so many reasons,
Yeah.
but she does lots of wrestling stuff and like educational things. So I went to a workshop of hers when I was in New York. There's an LGBT center in Manhattan, and they have an organization called the Lesbian Sex Mafia, which
I love this.
my favorite thing. There's loads, like some kind of older leather dykes who've been in this organization since the 80s, and then lots of younger people like me. And they had a workshop about like learning how to wrestle in a kind of sex-y way. So it's just about like building tension and sort of play fighting and all that kind of stuff. That has been really, really fun to like tap into. Because if I'm thinking about sort of playfulness and silliness in sex, that's a really good way of
I mean, I
doing
like
it.
play fighting. I could see that the one could lead to the other.
Like, would recommend. Is that wild enough?
Anyone want to wrestle with me?
Turn the cameras off.
Wait, it could be called WET. Is it spelled wet? I don't know what it would stand for.
You need to get into this so that then you can start a night called that. That's really good. I'm really here for
When
it.
we all go and just wrestle each other.
Yep.
I love it.
Hot.
This sounds fun. Yeah. A new kink unlocked.
You're welcome.
I didn't think I had one.
That happened to, I was like, oh, I'm just visiting my friend. Yeah, I'll go to your workshop. And then I was there going, hang on a minute. This is hot. I get it. I get how people are really into
Right,
this.
the cogs in my brain are really
Like
going now.
someone putting your head in like a headlock and like squeezing their thighs.
Yes, your
between
face-
like all of that stuff.
yeah.
It's like, it's fun. Lots of fun to be had.
Yeah.
I'll leave that one with you.
Thank you. That's something for me to think about. What about the weirdest thing that's ever happened to you in bed? Because I do think sex is one of those things where weird things happen, embarrassing things happen, funny things happen, and sometimes it's weird.
Would you like my favourite sex story?
Go on.
Okay.
Of course I would. I mean, it's a stupid question.
Obviously. This is one of my favourite things that's ever happened to me in my whole life. Such a wild night where me and one of my best friends went to a fetish club because we knew someone who was performing that night, and we were like, it'll be fun, woohoo. We were just like, we didn't
What could go
particularly, we
wrong?
were like, let's just have a fun time. Who knows? Got there. It's fucking wild, like really amazing. And just people being their full authentic selves, like happy little freaks, just loved it. But we had a really fun time there. And we're like, he's mostly gay. At the time, I was like, kind of like newly out and queer, but we're just like best mates.
Yeah.
And we started speaking to another couple who were people who were like just friends, but then like used to sleep together in a kind of just like casual way. But we really hit it off, me with the other woman and him with the guy, but then also in this kind of like smushy way of being like, oh, okay, there's some fun things here. Let's see what's going to happen. So we were all at this club for a while, and then we're like, okay, let's all go home together. My friend didn't live that far away and was living in like a really nice flat where we could have had some fun. But instead, the other guy that we were with was like, no, I've got a free house right now. Like, come back to mine. It will be great. It will be good. And so we did. And the walk took so much longer. And, you know, like it's starting to get light outside. And we were like, okay, what is this? Is this worth it? What are we doing? Like, you said you live around the corner. What's going on? And finally we got to his house, but he opened the door. He opened the door and he lived with his grandparents. And they were away for the weekend, but it was like a full house of people who were in their 80s. Like salmon-coloured kitchen, like little plastic runner on the floor. Pictures of the grandkids everywhere. So you went into their living room, like plastic covered sofas, little sensible like plates with cats on them.
No. Drier than the Sahara Desert.
No, we had so much fun. So we had like this wild foursome in a nan's front room. And like every once in a while, me and my friend kept looking at each other being like, what the fuck are we doing
You
here?
have like this moment of
What is
realization.
going on? But and that was just like one night of really fun, casual stuff. Like we didn't see either of those two people again, but just going like, I've got absolutely railed in a nan's front room on a plastic covered sofa.
Well, at least it's wiped clean
Yeah,
for
exactly.
those occasions. Good for the nan probably. She did have
I
that
think
on
she
there.
probably wouldn't have loved what was going on if she knew.
I mean, you never know. She might have been joining in. No, that would have been weird. Sorry, hold on, that would have been incest. Wait, no. Take that bit back. I got a bit too carried away there. But I suppose you never know.
But yeah, I think that's the weirdest thing that I've ever.
That is a little bit weird. Yeah. I mean,
it was amazing. It was so much fun, but also it was just like the stupidest environment ever. To be like, yeah, I guess we're doing this. Let's see if we can get in the groove.
I love doing this show because I think, like, sometimes I'm like, yeah, I'm you know, worldly when it comes to sex, and then I hear people's stories, and I'm like, I'm so vanilla, like, I'm so basic.
Well, I'm often quite vanilla, and then every once in a while, I'm like, oh no, come on, let's try this stuff out.
Throw caution to the wind.
Yeah.
When it comes to kind of group sex, what is the rules for snacks? Is there a good snacks?
Yeah, when I've been to bigger like sex parties or even private ones that are just at like a friend's house, but it's like a number of people, breaks and snacks are very important. I've not gone to any of those for a while now, but a couple of friends always used to like throw a party just before Christmas, and it'd be like a potluck. We'd all like
bring something.
Oh God, sorry, I've got burpy all of a sudden.
We were talking about food.
I know, right? My stomach's gone. But like, so we'd all bring a dish, and we'd all like first just sit down and be mates and catch up having food, and then things would get quite spicy. But then a lovely moment of being like, oh, it's actually 2 a.m. I'm a bit sexed out, I'm going to have seconds, and then just being sat in the corner waiting like, yeah, my mates are getting like, fucking over there. I'm just going to have some lovely like pizza and...
It's called a sex break though, but it's a good, you know, it's a good thing to do. Have a little break and then you can get back to it afterwards.
I think that snacks are quite important.
My friend, who I love dearly, she had a group sex. She kind of hosted it. It was impromptu. But the only snacks that she had was some kimchi and Hungarian wine. But she offered it to them and then apparently went down the store.
Well, I love kimchi. It's quite pungent.
Just before.
Yeah, but I guess if everyone's eaten it, if it's just one person, then that's not.
It seemed to work out. They all had good energy and had a good time. So, you know.
Maybe that's what you need.
Kimchi and Hungarian wine is the way forward. Maybe put that one in your book. Just let people know.
I've hooked up with some mates before, and then we've like done, and we had like loads of strawberries, but we just all couldn't take it seriously because it looked like we were trying to put on a kind of classy group sex event of being like, this is how to do it. And we were like, this is
dipped in chocolate.
So we were trying to say, like, we sort of played into it a little bit, and then we just all like were pissing ourselves laughing, being like, who are we? We can't do this.
How can you have sex with friends and then go back to just being friends with them?
Yeah, I think so. It changes a relationship because it's adding another layer onto it. But I think I'm always quite wary of who I do that with, because I don't want to run the risk of really, especially if it's a friendship where I really care about it as it is. Like, I think that can be a really beautiful thing. But there are some people in my life where it's like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll add another sexual layer onto this. And that can be really fun, but that doesn't mean that that's the thing that's like present in our dynamic all the time. Like, the foundation of this is friendship. I call that sexy friends.
Sexy
where
friends.
You're like, we're not gonna. It's not like an anonymous thing of just like hookup culture.
But that's not all your friends.
No. And I'd be exhausted if that was all my friends. I can't do that.
It's too many. And is it friends that you find attractive?
Yeah. I mean, I fancy a lot of my friends because people are cool and hot, and that's nice. But that doesn't mean that I then want to act. That's a need to act on it. Like, I think, again, like, can we blur the lines of attraction if I'm really into someone as a friend because I think they are fascinating and I love their personality and I can see how kind they are, like, those are all qualities that I look for in a romantic or sexual partner as well. So it doesn't feel like a massive switch to me. Doesn't mean I'm like lusting after all of my platonic friends.
Yeah. No, it's just interesting because I think, like, my best friend has been my best friend since I was 11, and I genuinely love her, and we get on so well and whatever. But I don't think we'd be good if we had sex together. I don't think it'd work. And Kat, if you're watching this, sorry, love. I just don't think it would work.
I've got some like girlfriends who I've known since we were kids, and we've like completely grown up together. And for me, I think there's the reason why I don't think I would want that to ever be sexual is because actually what's developed there is like a sisterhood. Yeah. There's a friendship there that's so, especially if you've really like grown up together and been through loads of shit. There isn't. But then I'll see one of those friends across the room at a party and just be like, you are one of the most stunningly beautiful people I know. But that's because I love them, because I know them so well. It's not me being like, whoa,
yeah, look at you. You're gorgeous.
I mean, they are, but...
There you go. What is your best advice for being good in bed?
This is gonna sound very like TED talky, but I think like, oh God, I can't, because it actually makes me feel quite grim. I'm about to say like, show up, but that feels gross. Just show up, man. Show up as your authentic self. But like, I think learning how to be present in sexual moments is something that is not taught and something that we really have to discover for ourselves. And you can tell when you're hooking up with someone and they are not really like mentally present and there. And I think that is just like a really fundamental thing that we need to figure out in ourselves. Also, hands, very unutilized in sex. I think that like, not in terms of the way that we like touch genitals, but also being more aware about how you touch and having intention with the way that you touch someone else, thinking about like pressure and sensation and varying that, I think can make someone feel completely electric just by like changing the way that you're touching them. And then there's obviously all the genital stuff where I think these come in very handy as well.
All the genital stuff.
All the genital stuff. Sorry, it was very unsexy way of talking
Love
about
a bit of genital stuff, me. It's my favourite. Let's go. I think the present thing is important, isn't it? Because I think a lot of times, you know, I think again, especially as women, you might be thinking about, what do I look like from this angle? Oh, you know, do I look fat? Is this like this? Is that? And you can't enjoy it.
Yeah.
You can't enjoy it because you're too worried about everything else. You're not even conscious of what's actually happening to your body because you're not there.
And like, I think we all have that. So it's not saying, oh God, you're a failure if you're not able to do that. But even like showing up and being present can even be saying, I feel like I'm really in my head at the minute. Like, and I'm okay, I'll let you know if I need to pause or stop, but I just want you to know that so that you're not thinking what's going on with her. Like, it's being able to voice those vulnerabilities, I think, can sometimes be read as a sign of weakness, but I do genuinely see them as a strength, because all you're doing is giving that person you're having sex with more information about the moment that they're in. And like consent, which is so layered and so important, consent is about us having the information that we need to make decisions. So if I'm aware that someone's like actually not fully present in that moment, that then might make me go, you know, I don't think I want to have sex with someone if they're not fully there, because I don't want that to mean that they do something that they then go to regret, or like they, you know, whatever. It gets into very complicated like consent territory, but I think it's really essential. That was a bit waffly at the end, but like, you know what I mean?
No, but I do.
Just telling someone where you're at is really important.
Yeah, I think it is really important actually, and having the confidence to do that, because I think it works both ways around. But you kind of, you know, I think it's about the eye contact, and it's about you know, like being there with somebody.
Yeah,
and that's what makes it really good. And when someone isn't, I can feel that. Like, I've noticed that.
And it invites you to be less vulnerable and present as well.
Yeah.
Like, I think we all have to there is a level of opening up mentally, physically, when it comes to sexual intimacy. And we have to do that sometimes to then demonstrate to the other person that they're able to do that. It's a bit of a little two-way street.
It's a two-way street.
Or 3 or 4 or...
however many of you there are getting involved. I've never had sex with more than one person.
And that is absolutely okay.
Yeah.
Again, like, a thing that pisses me off is suddenly people thinking about sex as a competition of like, we have to collect all these experiences and do these things. Like, if we just...
like the badges when you're in the Scouts, or the brownies.
Like, I mean, now I want a brownies outfit that, actually, no, probably brownies makes it a bit fucked up.
Guys.
But like one of those like things,
sashes.
In some ways that's great, but also that's not the approach that I want people to have going into sex.
Yeah.
Like,
you just have to do what you're comfortable with. Yeah. And I think, you know, I find sex like fascinating. And I think, again, like one of the reasons that I wanted to do this show is because I wanted to kind of like push myself to have conversations that aren't about necessarily representative of my sex life. And because I don't want to be a judgmental person. I want to, like, you know, understand how different people work. I find it so fascinating. But I also know myself, and I'm just like, it would terrify. It would be too much for me. It would be so like sensory overload for me.
And it can be like, there's lots of reasons why lots of different like sexually explorative things don't work for people as much as they do work, and they are enticing for others. So again, it's not like you being able to say, oh, I think there's enough stuff in there that's going to make me not feel great, is really important, because you're leaving yourself open to questioning things. And as we said before, like, who knows, you in 10 years,
who knows what
might
I'm
be a whole
doing.
different person and be interested in something.
When I've got my wet competitions going on. It's a wrestling competition, everyone, and it's going to be great. But again, I suppose like you just don't know, as your perception changes and what you become comfortable with changes, or how you feel safe, or any of those things, definitely do change. But I think, sometimes I'm just like, I have to question. I'm like, am I missing out, or am I not doing this because of shame, or, you know, being worried about what other people might think? Or is it that I genuinely, it just doesn't appeal to me, and there's something in me that just says no? So I think I'm constantly kind of, you know, being introspective about those things and exploring. And, you know, one day it's probably just going to be a yes. And that's it. And I'm all right with that. But maybe I'll limit the numbers. You know, I wouldn't go straight where there's loads and loads.
Yeah, you don't need to go full sort of Roman orgy
vibes.
I think that's overstimulating and overwhelming for everyone.
Ease yourself in, slide in gently. That's what she said. And finally, what is something non-sexual that turns you on, apart from Polly Pockets?
I mean...
No, I'm joking. I don't know if they do. But.
Well, jelly. That's the other thing on my necklace.
Oh.
Have you seen this stuff? I'm really into jelly.
Actual jelly?
Yeah, actual jelly.
What about wrestling in jelly?
I mean, that would be a dream. That would be great. I'll leave you to organise that, and then I'll just dive on in. But I think jelly's amazing. I've always been really fascinated by it, and I think the more and more just looking at things as like with the potential of being erotic, of being like, why is that? Yeah, okay, that's really doing something for me.
It's like
I'm into
wobbly,
it. It's very like enticing, the way that it moves.
Jiggles.
It's kind of got like a little
jiggly
life of its own.
Like if you slap it, jiggles.
There's an Instagram account that's like someone making jelly in vintage molds and like shooting really amazing like wobbly videos. I've actually been following her for a really long time, and I think I've like aggressively fangirled that she's really blown up in the last couple of months, and everyone sends them to me. It makes me so happy.
Wait, so if you see the videos of jelly, would that turn you on?
Like kind of. I mean, it's a sliding scale. Like I can go, oh wow, that's great. Or I can be like, hang on a minute, I'm really into this. But it's not, but like. It's
almost making that connection between that and something else.
Yeah, kind of. I think it's like allowing yourself to get into that headspace. And, you know, in the way that if I see something else that I find really hot on a turn on, if I'm like on my way to work or doing something really mundane, I'm probably not going to go, oh my God, I'm completely taken over. I'm like obsessed.
Yeah, because imagine if you're in Sainsbury's and you see a jelly and you're like, shit.
Yeah, don't worry. It's not that extreme. I can contain myself.
She's in Sainsbury's and she sees a jelly and just has to disappear into the public toilet. Know where you've gone now. If I ever am out with you and there's a jelly on the menu, I'll be like, uh-oh.
There you go.
Quick, call for reinforcements. There's jelly on the menu. But I do get it. And I think that's quite an interesting answer. Now it's going to make me think. I'm going to be thinking about jelly and wrestling and putting the two together.
I think I've opened a lot of people's eyes to jelly. So if you're part of the gang as well, welcome.
And wrestling.
There's great things to be discovered out there.
It's a whole new world. It's been so lovely to have you in the bed today.
Thank
really
you,
enjoyed
babe.
it.
I've loved this. It's been a really great chat.
Thank you. I'm glad that you've enjoyed it. I have as well.
Yeah.
Should we just go to sleep now?
Yeah, go on. Night.
Put the light. Do you have to have the lights on when you have sex? I think that's better, isn't it? You don't want to be, not like full blown lights, but you don't want to be dark.
I like to have some mood lighting.
You don't want to be lights off.
Yeah, I want to see what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can see the jelly, the jiggly bits.
So I can win at wrestling.
So you
can't wrestle in the dark.
So you can give someone else a fat lip.
No, I've told too many of my secrets.
The truth's coming out.